Hi guys, let me show you how to make those beautiful wrap shirts. If this is something you're interested in, watch this video to the end. I'll be making use of 2 yards of this beautiful floral fabric for mine. I'll go ahead and fold this into 2, just like this. Now I just want to make sure what I've folded is enough to accommodate my measurement. So I'm just checking it with my largest measurement, which is my bust measurement, and I'll adjust it accordingly. From the top, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches for my starting line. For the length of the top, I'll be using 19 inches. This top shouldn't be too long. It's supposed to sit just around the waist area. So 19 inches is perfect for the length of the top. Also remember that this top has a waistband which will be tied around it. So for the height of the waistband, I'll be using 2 inches. I'll subtract these 2 inches from the 19 inches for the top length. So what I'll be marking here is 17 inches. I'll go ahead and just mark this. Next I want to mark is my chest line. This top has the balloon sleeve and I don't want it to be very fitted around the armhole. I want it to have a little bit of ease around the armhole. So instead of marking 9 inches, I'll be marking 9.5 inches. Next, I want to mark half of my shoulder measurement. My shoulder is 17 inches, half of that is 8.5. So I'm just going to mark it here. Now it's time to impute my bust and waist measurements. On the chest line, I'll be marking my bust measurements divided by 4. My bust is 36. 36 divided by 4, that's 9. I'm going to mark 9 inch here. And I'll add half inch for a little bit of ease. So what I'm marking on the chest line is 9.5 inches. On the waistline, I'll mark my waist measurements divided by 4. And I'll draw a line connecting the points together. Now I just want to mark my shoulder slope. So on the start line, which is the shoulder line, I'll mark 3 inches inwards from the center. Then I'll come down by 1 inch. From the 3-inch point, I'll mark a slant line downwards to meet the 1 inch. This will serve as a shoulder slope. Then I'll go ahead to draw my armhole curve. I'm just marking the midpoint of this shoulder width line. Then I'll go in by ½ inch. Then I'll plot my armhole curve just like this. Next is to mark my neck opening. I'm working on the back block of this shirt, so I'll use a width of 3 inches and a depth of 1 inch. I'll just mark that and I'll draw my neck curve. I'll go ahead and add my allowances all around this block. On the neckline, I'll add ½ an inch all around it. On the shoulder line and armhole curve, I'll add ½ inch all around it. On the side seam, I'll add 1 inch, while at the hem, I will add ½ inch. I'll go ahead to cut this out. So this is our back block and I'll be using this as a guide to cut out the front. I'll fold my fabric into 2. I'll bring in my back block and I'll place it on top of it just like this. Now the front block is bigger than the back block, so when folding, take note of that. You can see the allowance I have at my center front. This allowance is for our button. Remember, it's a shirt we're making. From the center here, I'm going to mark 2.5 inch. I'm marking this so I'll know where I'll place my back block from. The 2.5 inches we are marking, 1.5 inch is for folding, while 1 inch is for the button overlap. I'll place my back block directly on this 2.5 inches mark and I will extend the hemline. For the front neckline, I'll be working with a width of 3 inches and a depth of 3 inches. Using the back as a guide, remember we came down by 1 inch and added an allowance of ½ inch. So I'll just place my tape at the ½ inch mark and mark my 3 inches downwards. We'll also be adding an allowance of ½ inch around the neckline of the front. So instead of 3 inches, I'll just mark 2½ inches and I'll connect this to the shoulder point. I'm using the same point where the back neckline stopped at the shoulder, so I'll just mark this and I'll trace it to get the front neckline. At the point where we have the 2½ inches allowance, instead of taking it straight, I'm just going to angle the line a little bit upwards. This will ensure that there will be no shortage when folding. I'll go ahead and cut out the front using the back as a guide. I'm just following the shape of the back to cut this out. I'm done cutting out the front. I'm just going to separate the middle. Remember, it's a shirt we're making. So this is what we currently have. 1 piece for the back and 2 pieces for the front. The next thing I want to work on is the sleeves. I'm going to fold my fabric into 2. Then I will fold it into 2 again, making it a total of 4. This is because I want to cut both sleeves at the same time. From the top, I'm coming down by 1½ inch to mark my starting line. From the start line, I'll be coming down by 26 inches for my sleeve length. We are making a balloon sleeve, so you want it to be a bit longer than your normal sleeve length. I'll be using this new line as my start line so you guys can see what I'm doing. From this point, I'll come down by 4 inches for my cap height and I'll make a straight line. On this cap height line, I'll be imputing the round armhole measurement. Remember when we're drafting our bodice, we came down by 9.5 inches to mark the chest line, and we also removed 1 inch for our shoulder slope, leaving us with 8.5 inches for our round armhole. So I'll be marking 8.5 inches on this line here, and I'll go ahead to curve the armhole this way. At the hem, I'm going to mark 9.5 inches and I'll connect to the cap height line with a straight line. I'll go ahead to add my allowance around the sleeve. At the side, I'm adding 1 inch allowance. At the hem, I'll add 1.5 inches allowance because I want to create a casing for the elastic. Round the armhole, I will add ½ inch allowance. I'll go ahead to cut this out. So this is what we have for the sleeve after we're done cutting. The next thing I want to do is to cut the waistband. The waistband will be on fold this way and we need a height of 2 inches plus ½ inch for joining, making it 2½ inches on fold. So when we open this up, we'll be having 5 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark 5 inches. I'll be using the entire length of this 2 yards fabric. I'll be cutting 2 pieces of this which I'll be joining together, giving me a total of 144 inches for my waistband. So these are the 2 pieces which I'll be joining together to get my 1 long waistband. I'll be moving to the sewing machine so I can start sewing. I'll be joining the front and back pieces together. I'll join them on the shoulder with ½ inch, and on the side I'll be joining it with 1 inch. On the front block, I'll be marking 1½ inches, which I will fold to create my bottom placket. So I'll just go ahead to mark my 1.5 inches from top to bottom. This will serve as my guide when folding. I'll do this for both pieces of the front block. To fold it, I'll be doing it this way. I'm going to fold it over on the 1½ inch mark that we just made. Then I'll be folding the edge in by ½ inch. It is on this ½ inch mark that I'll be sewing down. So you can fold it this way and give it a good press to get the outline so it will be easier when sewing it down. I'm done joining the front and back block on the shoulder and on the side, and I've also pressed all my allowances open. I also went ahead to press down my bottom placket, as you can see, to make it easier for me when sewing it down. I've sewn down the placket on both sides, and what I want to do next is to attach the waistband. I've already sewn the 2 waistbands together to make it 1 single piece. I also folded it into 2 and gave it a good press. The next thing I will do is to note the midpoint of my waistband. I will also take note of the midpoint of my top. So I'll fold my waistband into two, taking note of the middle point. I'll just make a notch there for easy identification. For the top, I'll fold the back part into two, making sure the two side seams meet. Then I'll also give a notch at the back. The next thing I will do is to match up the notch points on the top and on the waistband. I'll open up my waistband, and with the right side of the waistband facing the wrong side of the top, I'm going to match up the notches. I'll be sewing this down from the midpoint to one end of the top and from the midpoint to the other end of the top, just like this. I'll take this to the sewing machine to do the joining. So I'm done sewing it down. I'll be flipping over the other half we opened, just like this. To finish it off, I'll be folding half an inch inwards, just like this, and I'll run a stitch along the length of the waistband. You can fold this and press it down before stitching to make it easier. For the remaining length of the waistband, I'll be folding in ½ inch on both sides, and I'll run a stitch along the length to close it up. To finish off the edge of the waistband, I'll be flipping it over this way with both ends folded in. I'm going to run a stitch along this line to close off the edge, after which I will turn it over to the right side and continue my stitching. I'll be taking this to my sewing machine to do everything which I just explained. I'm done sewing down this part, and this is what it looks like. You can see that all my rough edges have been concealed. You can also see the end of my band that it has been neatly finished off. I left this other part undone so I can show you guys better everything I explained. You can see how I folded in my ½ inch and I pressed it down. That's why you see it lying so flat and smooth. I also held it down with pins. All this is to make the sewing easier for me. You can see the edge. I've already finished off this one, and this is what it looks like on the inside. You can see the ½ inch folded in before sewing it down, and when I turn it towards the front, this is what it looks like. So I'll go ahead and run a stitch from the midpoint down to the end of my waistband, just the same way I did on this other side. I'm done sewing the waistband. The next thing I want to do is to draft and fix my collar. Now this top has a bishop collar, and if you don't know how to make that, I'll be showing you how to go about it. The first thing I'll do is to measure round my neck circumference. So I'm just going to measure from one end down to the other end of my neckline. What I have here is about 19.5 inches, so I'll just take note of that. I'll be marking out my collar on paper first before transferring to my fabric. I want to get a straight line here to mark my starting point. The neck width we just measured, which is 19.5 inches, I'll be imputing the value here. I'll divide it by 2. 19.5 divided by 2, that's about 9.75 inches, and I'm going to mark that here. I'll draw a straight line down from that 9.75 inch mark. I don't want my collar too high, so I'll be working with a collar height of 0.75 inches. So anything between 1 inch to 0.75 inches is okay, depending on your preference. I'm just marking that down to get a straight line. Another measurement I want to take note of is my back neck width measurement. So I'm just folding my back neckline into two, making sure that my shoulder seams align. I'm going to take my measurement from the midpoint here right down to the seam line on the shoulder. What I have here is about 3.25 inches, and I'm just going to take note of that. Coming back to my paper, I'll be marking the 3.25 inches here, and I'll draw a straight line at that point. At this 9.75 inches line here, I'll be coming up by ½ an inch on both the upper and the lower line. This is to curve the collar because it is not supposed to be straight. The neckline is curved, so the collar is not supposed to be straight. I'm going to connect those points to the back neckline that we just drew. Just watch carefully to see what I'm doing. At this point here, I just want to curve out the edge of my collar. So I'm just going to give it a rounded shape just like this. Our collar is ready. I'm just going to add ½ an inch allowance all around this collar Or if you don't want to do that, you can do that on your fabric. I'll go ahead to cut this out when I'm done. I'll be folding my fabric into two to cut out the collar. I'll be needing two pieces for the collar, so I'm just going to fold this into two again. I'll be placing my pattern on it to cut it out. I'm not adding any allowances around it because my pattern already has allowance. I'll go ahead to cut out my fabric. I'm done cutting it out, and here are the two pieces for the collar. I'll be taking this to my sewing machine and I will join both sides, right side facing right side. I'm going to sew around this curved edge with ½ inch sewing allowance. I'm done sewing it down and I've also pressed it. What I want to do next is to fold it into two and make a notch at the midpoint of the edge that is still raw. I'll fold the neckline of my top into two, making sure that my shoulder seams align, and I will make a notch at the midpoint of the back neckline. I'll be attaching the collar around the neckline same way we did for the waistband. So I'll be fixing it from the wrong side of my top to the right side. I'll open up my collar, making sure my notches align. I'm going to sew one part of the collar around the neckline, and I will flip it over and sew down the other side, folding it in by ½ inch and sewing it down, just the same way we did for the waistband. So I'll be taking this to the sewing machine to do that now. You can also fold in and press down the ½ inch and hold it down with pins before sewing to make it easier. I'm done attaching the collar, and you can see what it looks like on the wrong side and also on the right side. The next thing I want to do is to fix my sleeves. I'll go ahead to attach it around my armhole. For the hem of the sleeve, I'll be folding in the 1½ inch allowance I left. I'll run a stitch across it and then I will pass my elastic through it. After which I will draw the elastic to gather it to the width that I want. And then I will close up the sides. I'm done fixing my sleeves and you can see what it looks like. You can also see the hem with the elastic pass through it. This is what the inside looks like and this is the outside. So we're almost done with this top. What's left is to fix the buttonholes and to fix the buttons. I'll be taking this to my mannequin to show you how to style it. So here's our top we just made and you can see how beautiful it looks. Now to style this, you're not going to do your buttons to the end. You're going to leave 1 or 2 buttons undone. And then you cross it over this way just the way you see me doing it. You take it to the back and pass it to the front. And then you can make your knots. And so we've come to the end of this tutorial, guys. If you've learned something from this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe to my channel and turn on your post notifications so you get alerts whenever I post a new video. Bye for now, guys, and see you in the next tutorial.